Hello and welcome to my film. I'm making a film about the global pandemic that's currently happening. And by the way, this isn't what my house looks like. I'm filming in a classroom in B block. But yeah, I'm just doing this obviously for Dave's module. Hi Dave. But I'm also doing this to remember what this whole thing was like. It's really changed the way that I think about a lot of things. So like hygiene, communication, mental health, like personal space. But it's also kind of, made me miss a lot of things, like seeing my grandparents or like, coughing in public without feeling paranoid. It's getting better, but we're not quite there yet. So this whole thing basically started when a cluster of pneumonia was discovered in Wuhan in China in 2019.
Chinese experts reportedly found a new coronavirus that traces back to the outbreak that we are seeing in Wuhan. And
Look at that. Not a clue what was about to happen. She looks so happy and carefree. Obviously, I'd heard about the coronavirus spreading, but it just seemed like another thing that you watch on the news. Watch, react, and then you forget and you carry on with your day.
Beijing has confirmed the number of people who have died from a new type of respiratory virus in China has now passed 40. Almost 1,300 people are now infected with the coronavirus, and the authorities have put more cities under quarantine. That's affected about 56 million people in total. Outside China, 3 cases have been confirmed in France. That's the first time the virus has been identified in Europe.
It was spreading quickly, but it seemed like a them problem. From my point of view, we were all peaches and cream. Surely I thought the government would have some sort of plan under their belt for whatever this coronavirus thing was.
Honey, you've got a big storm coming.
First confirmed death in Britain from coronavirus, or someone who's tested positive for coronavirus.
So it turns out I was wrong. At first it didn't really feel real, like a global pandemic. Surely this would last a couple of months tops and we'd be back in the pub in no time.
The coronavirus is the biggest threat this country has faced for decades, and this country is not alone. All over the world we're seeing the devastating impact of this invisible killer. People will only be allowed to leave their home for the following very limited purposes: shopping for basic necessities as infrequently as possible, 1 form of exercise a day, for example, a run, walk or cycle, alone or with members of your household, any medical need to provide care or to help a vulnerable person, and travelling to and from work, but only where this is absolutely necessary and cannot be done from home. That's all. You should not be meeting friends. If your friends ask you to meet, you should say no. The way ahead is hard, and it is still true that many lives will, sadly, be lost. We will beat the coronavirus, and we will beat it together. Stay at home, protect our NHS, and save lives.
So I should probably explain what COVID-19 actually is. So coronaviruses are diseases that cause illness in humans and animals. This particular one has symptoms of a fever, dry continuous cough, tiredness, as well as a loss or change of taste and smell. It's spread primarily through droplets of saliva or discharge from the nose when an infected person coughs or sneezes, and spreads most easily when people are in close contact with each other, in crowded settings and poorly ventilated spaces. When news broke that we were going into lockdown, everyone kind of lost it. Despite being told not to stockpile, people were queuing outside shops for hours to try and get their hands on anything and everything, and suddenly there was a shortage of necessities. No toilet roll, no pasta, no soap, no beans. It was like the world had gone mad with greed. Luckily for me, I was good pals with a couple of my housemates, had a hole in the fence for the neighbour's dog to crawl through, and the sun was shining almost every day. As well as this, I had a park down the road and a few months of British summer ahead of me to enjoy. I spent most of that first lockdown in a great mood, tanning all day and playing with a dog I wasn't entirely responsible for. During that period, I feel like there was a weird amount of pressure everyone placed upon themselves to achieve something. Get fit, get healthy, do creative stuff, start meditating, etc., etc. I tried and I failed. I started making jewellery out of clay and realised that it's actually difficult and requires some sort of skill, so that went down the drain.
England's long hibernation is almost over, says the Prime Minister, as lockdown is significantly eased. From next month, pubs, hotels, hairdressers and cinemas can all reopen as the 2-metre social distancing rule is being cut to just 1 metre.
After 3 months of not being able to do normal things, the lockdown is finally easing. It felt like a weight was being lifted off my shoulders. I could go and buy non-essentials in person. It's kind of impossible to forget that you're in a global pandemic. All of the advertisements have adjusted to the situation, showing heartfelt clips of people in isolation, zooming relatives and key workers being cheered on by the masses, all in order to sell whatever product is necessary. When you're not trying to numb your brain by engaging in mindless entertainment, there are signs everywhere telling you to wear your mask, use hand sanitizer or social distance, which was kind of a bizarre thing to begin with, but now it's just normal. Despite these constant reminders, I was still adjusting to the COVID way of life. Don't forget your mask at home. Stay 2 meters away from people. Take a hand sanitizer with you, just in case. And learn how to use this Zoom thing everyone's on about. In August, Bojo decided to be kind to us in the economy and introduced Eat Out to help out. Basically, in certain restaurants you can get 50% off any order up to £10. As well as this, I had just moved back to Wales for the summer and the sun was shining. Things were finally starting to look up. One thing I tried to avoid while in this global pandemic was the news. I know that sounds silly, but from my point of view, everyone else was watching it, so all the important stuff would be filtered down to me somehow. I didn't need more of a reminder that we were screwed.
From Thursday until the start of December, you must stay at home. You may only leave home for specific reasons. I'm afraid non-essential shops, leisure and entertainment venues will all be closed. Pubs, bars, restaurants must close except for takeaway and delivery services.
So you know how I said that things were starting to look up? Lockdown number 2 was introduced on the 5th of November. Basically, imagine lockdown number 1, but it's cold and it's raining and everyone's angry.
Breaking news for you this morning, because in the last few minutes we've heard that the first coronavirus vaccine has been approved for use in the UK.
Something good on the horizon though, a vaccine. The end was in sight.
Just the two of us. We can make it if we try. Just the two of us.
In December, I decided to go back to Doha, Qatar, to spend Christmas with my parents. And so I was taken straight from the airport to quarantine in a hotel for a week, which was quite nice considering I'd been in a house with 3 other 20-somethings trying not to be snappy with each other because of prolonged contact. So basically, they have this app that you have to get to enter into Qatar called Ehtiraz. It shows a QR code on the app which is either red, grey, yellow or green. If you're red, you're confirmed to be infected. If it's grey, you're suspected to be infected or have been exposed to someone who is. If it's yellow, you're in quarantine, and if it's green, you're free to go where you please. Other than this change, things were more or less the same. Obviously, people had to wear masks, but shops, restaurants and bars were all open. I had my cats, my freedom and my family. So Christmas was relatively normal. Christmas in the UK, however, was not.
Meanwhile,
we don't want to, as I say, to ban Christmas, to cancel it, and I think that would be frankly inhuman and against the instincts of many people in this country.
3 days later,
we must, I'm afraid, look again at Christmas. I must tell you, we cannot continue with Christmas as planned. In England, those living in Tier 4 areas should not mix with anyone outside their own household at Christmas.
So just like the Grinch, Bojo swooped in and stole Christmas. And on top of that, Matt Hancock had some fun news to share.
Just as we've got a tiered system in place that was able to control this virus, we've discovered a new, more contagious virus, a variant that is spreading at a dangerous rate.
I forgot to mention that earlier. Basically, viruses change through mutation, and this could potentially allow them to spread more easily or make them more resistant to treatments or vaccines. It sucks.
I know that these actions have consequences. I know how difficult it is, but I also know that it is right to take the action that's necessary to control this virus. So it's important that we all minimise our social contact as much as is possible.
I decided it would be best for me to stay in Qatar for a while longer while everything blew over back in the UK. Luckily for me, I had a few good friends and a lot of cats and something I hadn't had in quite some time. Freedom.
meanwhile,
we need to do more together to bring this new variant under control. In England, we must therefore go into a national lockdown, stay at home, protect the NHS, and save lives.
Meanwhile, in the UK, things weren't looking great. On the 6th of January, the UK entered its third national lockdown. This meant that, other than there being a lot of pissed off Brits, I was stuck in Qatar for the foreseeable future. My daily life was balanced on spending time with my pets or going shopping out of boredom, as consumerism is a huge part of life in Qatar. I even managed to get my license a few days before they introduced some new rules which prevented driving schools from running. On the 15th of March, Qatar was added to the UK's red no-fly list, meaning I would have to quarantine when I was back, even though I would be fully vaccinated. After 4 months of constantly being surrounded by cats and avoiding the horrendous British winter and lockdown, it was time to get back to Bristol. By the time I was leaving, it was getting too hot to sit outside for long anyway, and the cases were getting bad. I left on the 8th of April and Qatar went into full lockdown on the 9th. I travelled back to the UK via Madrid to my 10-day lockdown stay in the Holiday Inn Heathrow. My routine consisted of waking up, watching Scooby-Doo while I ate breakfast, showering, stretching, doing work, eating lunch, doing more work, going for my 20-minute daily walk around the car park, seeing the hotel cat, Perry, eating dinner, watching TV, and going to bed. Every day. For 10 days. I also re-chipped my teeth at one point, which was fun. Luckily for me, non-essential shops, hairdressers and outdoor seating at pubs and restaurants were due to open on the 12th of April, so that meant there was time for everyone to settle down by the time I got out.
Many unbearable hours later.
Back to civilization at last. For the few days after leaving the hotel, I kind of missed it. The routine, the time to myself, the meals I didn't have to make, the mess that was mine and no one else's, and the lovely hotel cat. However, after being out in the world for a few days, I got over it.
Meanwhile,
I can confirm today that we've met our 4 tests for further easing the lockdown in England. This means the rule of 6 or 2 households that is applied outdoors will now apply indoors, and the limit for outdoor meetings will increase to 30. From next Monday, you'll be able to sit inside a pub and inside a restaurant. Subject to the impact of step 3 on the data, we remain on track to move to step 4 on the 21st of June.
The next few weeks were pretty blissful. The weather was nice, the neighbours' cats were around all the time, but best of all, I could finally go and do uni work. Trying to get anything done in the house was pretty futile, honestly. There was always something I found to do that I convinced myself was productive, and so I didn't feel guilty about not doing work. Kira and I were at the library pretty much almost every day, trying to get some work done, while surrounded by COVID reminders, of course.
Since today, I cannot say that we have met all our 4 tests for proceeding with step 4 on June the 21st. I think it is sensible to wait just a little longer.
Even though this was obviously a bit of a disappointment considering everyone had been waiting for this for ages, it was probably a wise decision on Bojo's part not to reopen everything on the 21st. Until then, we could go clubbing, sat down of course, go charity shopping and go to restaurants. As well as this, everyone was getting their jabs, which made me feel a lot more at ease.
Turning now to step 4 of our roadmap. We have cases rising significantly with more than 30,000 per day, and we can see what is happening across Europe as the Delta variant takes hold among our friends.
Things were starting to look up, so that meant it was time for a new variant to take hold. This time, it's the Delta variant, which originated in India. It's a more contagious strain than what we've seen before, 50% more contagious than the original strain. In the UK, the Delta variant now makes up more than 90% of new COVID-19 cases. So that's cool.
If we were now to delay this 4th step, for instance, to September or later, then we would be reopening as the weather gets colder and as the virus acquires a greater natural advantage. But it is absolutely vital that we proceed now with caution. And I cannot say this powerfully or emphatically enough. This pandemic is not over. We will stick to our plan to lift legal restrictions and to lift social distancing.
What does this plan entail, you ask?
Today, Monday the 19th, has been called Freedom Day in England as most legal restrictions on social contact have been lifted. There are now no limits on how many people can meet, and table service won't be necessary in pubs and restaurants. The British Prime Minister has urged everyone to remain cautious, with a warning that the number of new infections will continue to surge. From today, face coverings are not required by law, although they are recommended in some crowded public spaces, such as public transport. Nightclubs can reopen and theatres and cinemas can return to full capacity. This comes despite concern about a wave of new cases, more than 50,000 per day across the United Kingdom.
So, clubs are open, no social distancing is required, and neither are masks, even though the majority of people barely wore them to begin with. If this isn't a recipe for disaster, I don't know what is.
Several days later.
Another record-breaking week, so 689,000 people told to self-isolate in the week ending last Wednesday. The week before that, the figure was just under 620,000, so a significant increase.
A few moments later.
That's breaking news. The UK's Office for National Statistics says an estimated 1 in 65 people in England had COVID-19 in the last week.
So basically, we're all caught up now. It's the 3rd of August. Everything's changed, and to be honest with you, I'm quite scared about the whole situation. At the moment, I know more people isolating with COVID than ever before, and even more people isolating because of the app or just completely ignoring the ping. I predict that cases are going to keep going up, people are going to keep dying, and it's all going to be blamed on us young people, even though at this point we're just following government guidelines. Despite being in a global pandemic for almost a year and a half, it's still kind of weird. I know this may sound kind of dumb, but I don't know anyone who hasn't changed throughout this whole thing, especially in terms of mental health. It's also pretty strange that one day soon this is going to be taught in history books and it's going to be a faint memory. But I guess all that needs to be said is...
People say that time heals all wounds.